Welcome back. In this video, we're going to look at the image preview and selecting appropriate years to run through the composites. And actually something I should have shown you previously, we do also have this little button here that makes the whole app go full screen, which is kind of nice. And again, I should have showed you that before, sorry about that. So what you'll have once you've fetched your NDVI is you'll see the years where we found suitable data. And you may not have data for every year, and that could be because there were no good cloud-free images that were available. Things like smoke as well will get filtered out there. Often we don't see any from 2015 because that's when the satellites were just launched and just operational, and they didn't capture every region in 2015. So again, this is what you'll see. And in most cases in my testing, you're usually getting minimum of about 7 or 8 years, usually more like 8 to 10. And what you need to do here is look at each year individually and then think about whether or not you want to include it in the analysis. So let's have a look at 2017. What we're also doing here is just for the region, it also gets a rough estimate of whether it was a wet year, a dry year, or an average year, based on the time period that we're fetching the NDVI from, which is sort of June into July. And it'll just give you a little icon here as well. So again, this is general. It's not specific to the field. It'll be to sort of the area, the region. But it might just give you an idea and maybe make sense to you on some fields. If it doesn't, then just ignore it. So you preview each year with the selector here under preview. So that's previewing 2017, that's 2018, that's 2019, 2020, etc. You understand what I mean. Don't worry so much about it'll be some overlap around your field boundaries sometimes and things like that, a little bit of bleed. Don't worry about that. These are just really rough images because otherwise it uses quite a bit of memory. So this is just a rough preview, just so that you can see what's going on in the imagery. And what you're going to be looking for are signs of anything that doesn't look right. So sometimes maybe like a cloud shadow could get into an area, for example, and you might see something, really red areas that don't line up to anything else that you don't see in another year, for example. It shouldn't have cloud in because it should be filtered, but it could happen. Some things still slip through. In general, it's pretty good there. But the main things that you're going to be looking for are things like split crops, so fields that weren't always farmed as they are today. And if you've got two completely different crop types, you want to exclude those years because they will not produce a good result. Likewise, if there are mechanical issues or something in the field, or maybe half the field was reseeded later, again, that's going to mess up the NDVI. So check through each year and just make sure that everything looks good. And you really want to include as many valid years as you can. So actually, when I look through this one, for example, I would probably include all of these years because there's nothing that stands out there that doesn't look good. But let me just show you something, an example that maybe does. Okay, so here's a different field that I just found, and to me, this area here could be genuine, or it could be a little bit of cloud shadow that slipped through. So as an example, it doesn't seem to fit, and when I looked at the other years for this field, it didn't seem to fit either. So out of abundance of caution, I would eliminate that year from the analysis on this particular field, as an example. Here's another field again. So this one, fairly obviously that something mechanical has happened here. Maybe some of the field was planted, seeded earlier or later. Maybe some was reseeded, I don't know. Maybe it was two different varieties. But in either case, just the difference that we're seeing here, you would not want to include this year in your analysis. And as another example, here's a field that looks like today it's being farmed as a full section, but in this case, back in 2016, it looks like this quarter was a different crop. We can make out that the 3 quarters here probably are the same crop, but that looks like a different crop to me, so I would leave that year out. Looks like for this one, 2017 looks like it was all the same crop. 2018, again, I would possibly suggest that that was a different crop in 2018 as well, possibly even as being farmed as two half sections with different crops or different seeding dates or something. So again, as you look through these, you'll start to learn what looks normal and maybe what doesn't quite look right. And if you're in doubt, just leave it out. That's the safest way. So back to our demo field here, and I also want to just explain what we've done here. So when we fetched the NDVI data for each year, we actually look at multiple images if they're available throughout the growing season, and the algorithm will actually then pick the highest NDVI or the highest biomass at each pixel within the field. So if you did have some areas of the field that maybe still yielded well but matured a little bit later, it should pick that up, provided that there were multiple captures during that year. It's not always going to be, but in general, the idea here is that this should be the peak biomass for each part of the field through the growing season. And once you've decided which years you're going to include in your composite, you're just going to check them off and they'll just turn green like that. So in this case, we were going to use all of them, but let's say you didn't want to use a couple of the years, you can turn them on and off. And maybe if you're seeing a real trend between wet and dry years, you might even be able to make different zone sets based on wet and dry years. It seems to work well sometimes, other times it doesn't. But the option is there as well. So that's the kind of the overview of how that works. And then once you've done that, you're going to click on Create Composite, and then it'll move you to the Zones tab, and we'll catch up there in the next tutorial video, and I'll take you through the standard zone creation.